Hi, good afternoon on this lovely, lovely September day. Today we're talking all things Nikon F3. It's going to be quite a vlog, I think, this one, because this is an extremely versatile camera. It is a modular platform that you can almost apply to any kind of photography going. I think Nikon back in 1980, when this first rolled off the production line, basically threw the kitchen sink at this one. They went all out. It was basically their flagship camera, top professional camera. So I guess the equivalent today would be the D6. But yeah, you can basically adapt this to anything you want. It's staggering, the array of accessories that come with this kind of camera. Nikon obviously did the various other Fs and FMs and FEs and what have you. This was the top pro camera. This was all singing, all dancing. I'll draw a reference to one or two of those models a bit later on when we come to it. I thought I'd give you a hands down with this. I've had this particular camera, well, not had it. This is 30 years old. I actually I went online and I thought maybe the serial number at the back of the camera here would give you the age, but Nikon didn't do it like that back then anyway. You just take off the back plate here and there's a number underneath there. I'm not going to do it because it doesn't, it's not all that interesting. It's just a 4-digit number, and I think it's the first number pertains to the month. Mine is a D, but basically how they work it out is that it's normally a number which goes from 1 to 9, which is January to September. And after September, it becomes letters. So O for October, N for November, D for December. Mine is a D and it's a 2. And I bought mine back in 92. So I'm guessing it's a 92 camera. Made in 92, purchased in 92. 30 years old. And still going strong. I think or feel like I have to elaborate on that somewhat. Still going strong, yes, but this camera has never been serviced or maintained or even had a seal replacement. Nothing. That, if it needed something after 10 years, I would have considered that a great run. Okay, check it back in. It needs something adjusting or some new seals or whatever. No, absolutely nothing. And before doing this vlog, when I was doing some research, I actually checked the seals. And look, I don't know how they do it, but I'll show you them a little bit later when I come to it. But they still look as new as the day they came out of the box, and I can't quite get my head around. Maybe I'm misunderstanding something. I'm not an expert in seals, but they look fresh as a daisy. So then I thought, do I have anything else? Do I own anything else that is 30 years old with moving parts, or without moving parts? Let's say, let's go the whole hog. Without moving parts, or with, that I haven't spent money on in some way. And I couldn't think of anything. I mean, not anything close. This has never had a penny spent on it other than the purchase price. And it is still going strong. Let me go another stage further, because for me, this is what's staggering about this camera. It does have the plaudits. It does have the accolades, you know, an iconic camera and all this kind of stuff. Words that are quite frequently bandied about, you know, willy-nilly. This deserves it. I honestly believe if there's a camera that's ever been made, this camera deserves those labels. There is nothing on this camera that doesn't have the exact same tolerances as the day I bought it. There is not a dial, not a lever, not a button that doesn't have the exact same tolerance as the day it rolled off the production line. Again, I don't know how Nikon do it. I know they're legendary for you know, the materials they used and the quality of the standard of workmanship and design. It's an Italian guy that came in and did a few kind of cosmetic, you know, outer design things. You know, if you go from the F2, which is a phenomenal camera, but it is pig ugly. I mean, unless you kind of like that kind of thing, it is a bit of a monstrosity. To this, I mean, I don't know how much he was responsible for, you know, the difference between the F2 and the F3. I don't know, but this still looks modern to me. This is 30 years old. This still looks relevant to me today. I mean, it's an SLR film camera. It looks incredible. Okay, yeah, that's just cosmetics. But the tolerances, like preview button, the ISO, this lift dial, you know, it's still got that rigidness that is just phenomenal. The shutter speed dial, just absolute solid, exact clicks. Nothing has loosened. Nothing is feeling a little bit tired, a little bit loose, a little like it's 30 years old. Nothing. It's exact. You take the viewfinder off. I mean, they are absolutely, you know, you have to, you know, it's not difficult to do, but you have to apply pressure. It's the exact pressure. Nothing has changed. And, you know, it's just staggering. You can easily take all that for granted. But when you think about it, that is just astonishing engineering and design. And, you know, all the spin-offs from that, reliability, beautiful to use, ease of use. Yeah, nothing about this camera gets in the way. Nothing at all. You know, it's all bells and all whistles, but the fantastic thing about this is that everything locks down. So if you're starting out in photography, you might be a little bit intimidated by something like this. No, just zero everything. Everything has a lock, so you can't knock it by accident. So that leaves you free to literally stick a film in the back, whack a film in, set your ISO, maybe stick it on aperture priority, and you're basically good to go. You're basically good to go. Now, this is coupled with the Japanese version, so the best version of the Pancake 1.8 50mm lens, which, as you can see, is very, very short indeed. This is one of the larger SLR cameras. It's nowhere near, obviously, the size of a DSLR, but it is one of the, you know, the larger SLRs. But that lens, this combination, just brings it all back to a very compact, a very compact setup that I shoot like a point and shoot most of the time. It's that simple. You can do that with this camera. And then, you know, as you get into it and you get familiar and you start looking at stuff, you can then expand. You can start shooting manual. You can begin to use your exposure compensation dial, or whatever it is you want to do, you have got places you can go with this. The more familiar with the camera that you get, the more expansive you can get. They say there's no one perfect camera for all situations. I believe if you just look at the accessories that are, this has been to NASA. NASA has used this. Google the accessories, it's staggering. You've got 4 different viewfinders that you can just pop on, pop off. No screws, no difficulty, just these 2 levers here, pull them back, off it pops. And you've got an HP viewfinder, which is a high viewpoint, I think it's called, which is basically for people with glasses. It's got a sort of slightly larger, you look through and you can sort of stand away from it a little bit and still see the full screen, the full viewfinder. I prefer this one. This is, I think, the DE2, and the HP is the DE3. This is slightly smaller, not as bulky, and it has slightly better magnification than the DE3, than the HP. But you can buy them separately. You can have both, depending on any given situation. Excuse me. I've got the artisan strap on here. I'm going to take that off just because it's getting in the way a little bit. It comes with the Nikon lugs, strap lugs, but they're plastic and metal, and I've never used those because I just think, I don't know. Just think they're kind of quite tough on the paint. I'm not overly precious about my cameras, but I don't want to intentionally kind of scrape paint off if I don't have to. Said I'm going to take this off. It's not as easy to do on camera. There we go. Just need to start it off. No. Anyway, moving on. I'm going to show you a little bit about, move around this camera, show you a few things. I'm not going to wax lyrical too much, because look, at the end of the day, it's about you fiddling and seeing yourself. And there are plenty of vlogs with this is this and that's that kind of thing. I don't want to take the whole vlog up showing you around, because for me there's a lot more to say about this camera than simply this is this, this is that. I will try and talk about 1 or 2 possible negatives about this camera as well, just to try and balance it up. They're not negatives to me, but they're negatives that might be, factors for other people. So, where to start? Okay, let's go this way up and then across and then back around again. So, we have the button there for the lens on off. Nikon go the other way around to every other manufacturer. We have a sync port there that's covered up with the plastic protector. Just put that back on before I lose it. And we obviously have the lugs for the strap, sort of front sides, I guess. Here we have the rewind crank, which, has this little thing on. You have to move that way before you can lift it up. It's locked down, in other words. Just, again, you can't move something by accident, by mistake. We have the exposure compensation. Again, another little button here that you push down and just move that disc around, plus or minus 2. If you can see that, plus or minus 2. You have the ISO dial at the back here, little numbers, and you just lift up the dial and turn. Again, you've got to put some effort into that. Nothing is loose on this camera. I'm not exaggerating, but it's got a very reassuring lock in, and you just know that nothing is going to get knocked, which is a lovely, lovely thing, which, in in real terms, if you're starting out, so long as you've got your ISO to the right number, however you want to rate your film, everything else is locked down. Stick it on aperture priority, which is, I think, a fantastic way to work. And you just use your aperture. Decide what aperture you want, focus, bang. And the metering in this is fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. It's not matrix metering, it's center weight metering, but it's extremely accurate. Extremely, just, wow, staggering. It's an electronic shutter. When this first came out, this was a new thing. It was a new thing. Electronic shutters scared a lot of people. Oh, what if the batteries go and I'm gonna, get caught out in the field? I'm talking professional applications here. And they thought maybe they weren't going to be as accurate. 30 years later, fantastic criterion for time tells, isn't it? Very, very precise. A lot less hassle than a manual shutter. They need tweaking from time to time. This is, blisteringly accurate. Yes, you need a battery, but Nikon even thought of that. But I'll come to that in a second. Just to appease those professional photographers that we're used to, manual shutters, Nikon had that covered. I'll come back to that in a second. So ISO, we have a hot shoot. Now this is unique to the F3. It isn't a normal hot shoe, it has rails. So the base of the flash fits over, the stem of the base of the body of the flash fits over the rewind crank, which is a bit of a, I always loved it, but then I'm not a flash shooter, so I just loved the design of it. It just seemed, so much more, I don't know, just a very incredible, I wouldn't mind betting that was the Italian guy that, normally it's just stuck here, which is, it's fine, but he's just kind of moved it out, kept all this nice and clear and plain, and sort of placed it here so it's kind of integral to the rewind crank. However, you can get little adapters that slide over there with a hot shoe on, so it's not a problem, and they cost a couple of quid, not very much at all, a couple of dollars, whatever. We have at the back here, just moving round to the back, we've got a curtain, a red curtain that just flips over like so to stop any light. If you're doing a timed exposure and you've got a very bright backlight, just stops any light getting into that prism area that might get onto the film. Never used that, but in fact I don't use the vast majority of the things on this camera. And again, I'll come to it in a bit. Why do you have a camera like that then? Well, I'll come to that. On the back, you just have obviously the film door. So let's just open that briefly. Like I say, you have to just, I'm looking back to front here, moved it the wrong way, the opposite way. So you just have to put your film in here, slide the leader over, poke it through those spools. Nice firm purchase, and then just wind on a couple of times to make sure that it's through properly. I'm just going to say a little thing here. Whenever you load film, this is for beginners, whenever you load film, normally these spools are really take-up spools where you put your leader through. They're normally really, really good. I know they're excellent on this camera. I can't vouch for others, but I think they're probably pretty good, as long as you put it in properly and it gets a proper purchase. But you hear stories of, the never-ending, the eternal roll of film that never ends, because it's actually come off. And so you're winding on and you're looking at your counter and it keeps going on. The numbers keep transporting, but you swear you've finished that film, but it hasn't taken. So you throw your film in thinking that you've got all those exposures, and of course they come out black because nothing has been recorded. So the key, absolute key thing is here is once you've put it in, you've closed your back, you've wound on once or twice just to get some nice, clean, fresh film that hasn't been exposed. Once, as you're winding on those two, this should move around. This should spin around. That's how you know the film is moving across and that it has caught on to the spool correctly. Okay, that will always move every single time you wind on. Just watch that. That will spin around. If it doesn't spin round, then it hasn't caught properly. So just bear that in mind. I hear so many stories about, just being maybe a bit sloppy, or maybe your SLR doesn't have a particularly good mechanism. Every SLR I've ever used, I've never had a problem. It's normally really, really good. But hey, maybe initially you're a bit tentative and you kind of you're a bit scared to push it firmly in. I don't know how it happens, but watch this thing. It will spin around every time you wind on. This will spin around. Spin, stop, spin, stop, spin, stop. Okay, really, really important. Little bit of cardboard from the carton of the film that it comes in, just to remind yourself what film is in there. If I know I'm going out shooting somewhere, I always put the data anyway on the back, just because film doesn't have metadata to record all that stuff. And if I know I'm going to shoot something, I'll just put a little prompt of what it was. I might not expose the whole film there and then, but at least it's going to jog my memory. Because, you could put your camera down and not use it for 6 months. I seldom do that, but I have done it in the past. I try not to do it, and, but this isn't my go-to camera, so there's more chance of it happening with this camera. So, yeah, that's just a little tip. Maybe that might be useful right on the back. Give yourself a chance of remembering the date and what you first shot if you don't finish the whole film. Moving round, well, no, let's not move round. Let's talk about the viewfinder. 4 different viewfinders, I said. You can even put a waist level finder. Nikon, all available online, readily available today. You literally whip this thing off, pull those levers either side and just lift off. And you can put a waist level finder on this, so you can actually see everything like so. It's a proper waist level finder, like a Hasselblad waist level finder. It's incredible. This thing is just like a work of art. I don't know. I just love this thing. But anyway, just a gorgeous design. Down here we have the Fresnel focusing screen, of which Nikon do, I think it's 16 or 20 or something crazy like that. Again, all available, and they just flip out so easily with your thumb here. It's designed so you put your fingernail in there, your thumbnail I use, and then just gradually, these are very, very delicate. You have to drop one of those, it'll probably crack. I never have done, and that's the K screen that it comes with, which I find the best for focusing anyway. And these screens are, I would say, a stop lighter, brighter than any other SLR screen, which is lovely. Absolutely amazing. Am I going to go in there and give you some? I don't think I'm even going to be able to get get enough light in there for you to see. But it's just basically, that's where all the magic takes place. That's where your aperture will allow as much light in as you deem appropriate, or it'll be automatic if it's aperture priority. Sorry, if it's shutter priority. There isn't shutter priority on this, but you know what I mean. And that's the film playing along here, down below, obviously, and you've got your mirror in there as well. Hence. Anyway, there we go. I'm just going to pop that in before any accidents occur. You have a little index thing on a lot of Nikon lenses that allows you to see the aperture through a window. You see the small numbers, maybe you've got the main aperture numbers here. And then right at the back, up against the camera, you have smaller variations on that. That is so, this window, you have, that's the front of the viewfinder, but underneath it's like an overhanging viewfinder a little bit, which allows these windows to read those index marks, which, so you can, it's a physical number that you're seeing through that window, not an LCD readout or anything like that. And that's what those are about. But as I say, four different viewfinders. Choose whichever one suits you. And alongside the f-stop window, you have an LCD window, which it was a very new thing. I think it was the first Nikon camera, if I'm right in thinking. You know, the F3 was the first one to incorporate an LCD. It was massive at the time. And the funny thing was about, it's kind of bizarre, on the instruction manual, which you can actually, by the way, download, PDF, on page, what is it, page 32, yeah, page 32, Nikon actually talks about after 6 or 7 years, the LCD will go. It'll fade or something, it'll bleed out or what have you. And I have heard some things on the internet about that. But 30 years later, mine is still going. So, you know, I don't know whether mine is, I don't know, was made on steroids or something. I have no idea. But it's still going. I was going to read that out to you. But the lovely thing is, it's actually in there, and it says, pop it into a shop and they'll replace it for a nominal charge. So they anticipated, I don't think they actually knew too much about them. They had the technology, but they obviously they weren't going to wait 7 years to find out whether or not, you know, what the longevity of them was going to be. So, hey, but at least they're honest enough to, you know, to flag that up, which I always found very sort of honest and open and straight about them, which is fantastic, I think. Maybe if you're in the market for one, maybe that's a check that you should, you know, does the LCD still work? It ain't a deal breaker if it has bled out, because you don't need it. It's kind of nice to have, and it's much better to have one than not have one, I guess. But you can, you know, the camera still works perfectly well, and you can use your dial if you're shooting in manual to see what it is anyway. Excuse me. So, moving on to the right hand side, you obviously have your film counter there. It just tells you how many shots you've taken. I'm just going to mention something here, because on this camera, until the counter hits 1, the meter will only shoot at an 80th of a second. And I thought about that in the early days, and I thought, okay, that's kind of Nikon's, you know, it's a professional camera, so it's Nikon's way of saying, okay, you're good to go. There's no exposed film, in other words. You're safe. You're not going to get half a frame of something and then a sort of, you know, fogged film effect on the other half. However, I know that I can get 38, 39 shots off this by, you know, I know my leader's going to go in, I'm watching this, close the backup, wind on twice, which basically clears the film. The next frame is good to go. But it's only going to fire at an 80th. That's fine. Just do a meter reading. What's your aperture for f8 in that lighting condition? So you can use it, but it's not going to give you a meter reading until you get to number 1. is it 0 or 1? Something like that. You'll see, because you'll look through the viewfinder and see that it's changed from an 80th to whatever it might be. Just a little note to get some more frames. We have a double exposure little lever here, which it's kind of so nothingy, but hey, if you're into that kind of thing, on lots of other cameras, it's kind of really antiquated, and you have to sort of keep things pressed and then wind on and then move your finger out at the last minute. Here it's just, you take you wind on, take the first shot, boom. Oh, listen to that shutter. Is that not just the most beautiful shutter sound for an SLR? So you've taken your first shot, and then you want to put another shot on top of that same piece of film. Just move that out, move that in that direction, and the film doesn't move on. So I've done that. That goes back, flips back, but the film hasn't moved on, and you're good to take the next exposure. You've obviously got to expose correctly for it though. Another unique, completely and utterly unique feature of this camera that you will not find on any other SLR is this wind-on crank. This film wind-on crank is probably the best wind-on crank ever. It's a big claim. You can't feel that, but I can assure you, anybody that's used one of these will tell you that is legendary. It is absolutely the smoothest, easiest. It kind of accelerates as you go through. Gets faster as you go. I think it's got 11 ball bearings in that seem like they're bathing in the most luxurious oils known to man. It's so smooth. Even when there's film in, you'd think, oh, you're going to feel that film pull across. No, you don't feel anything with this. You can't even tell there's film in. It's I don't know what it is. I'm not an engineer. All I know is that it's utterly beautiful to use. It feels great. A few things going on outside. Pardon me for that. What else? Coming to the close. So on/off button is here. When the red button's showing, it's on. It's good to go. That switches everything off. I leave mine on. The meter, the LCD lights up for about 16 seconds, 16 or 18 seconds. Can't remember. Anyway. And then it turns itself off, and I'm pretty certain, you know, the batteries don't drain. People say they do, but I've never encountered that. These have been in for 2 years minimum. I think if you're using this regularly, then probably they're good for maybe a year, 18 months, depending on how much you use it. But what I'm saying is, if you leave that on in the bag overnight, the batteries don't drain in a couple of weeks at all. Never, not once has that ever happened. They don't drain in a couple of months. You can leave it on, basically, or you can turn it off. That's fine. What I'm saying is, you don't get into trouble if you forget to turn it off. You have on the other side here, just below the shutter speed dial, you have another lever, which again is, you've got to really sort of doesn't move over easily, and that is for the self-timer. What they're doing putting a self-timer on this camera, I don't know, but I reckon they realized a lot of people were going to buy this camera. A lot of people were going to love this camera, and they did. I nearly forgot to say, this has got the longest production run of any professional SLR camera ever in history. 21 years. The last one rolled off, I think, 2001. They launched it 1980 and it went on to 2001, during which time they bought out the F4 and the F5, but still kept making these. When the F4 came out, when the F5 came out, the F4 stopped. This was still being made just because, you know, I mean, look, supply and demand, what a fantastic criterion. People aren't going to keep on buying these things if they don't love them. And 21 years, yeah, I don't think, back then, I know you get a new model DSLR every year now, but a model would last for 4 or 5 years, generally speaking, give or take. This was 21 years. And if you want to go by, you know, how many years it ran for, i.e. supply and demand, and people wanted them, so Nikon made them, you know, they couldn't afford not to. That is a brilliant test for how good these cameras are, you know, how much they were desired, how much they were wanted, how much people were prepared to spend a lot of money. You know, in today's money with inflation, this would if Nikon was still selling these would probably sell for about I'd say about 3,500. About 3.5 grand, something like that. You know, maybe 4. You know, everything is on this camera. It's not, you know, it doesn't have a chip in it or a, you know, but it does everything that you need. And if you want extra, you can. If you want to shoot 4 frames a second, you can put the MD4 on, the motor wind thing. You can do what you want with this camera. This camera does everything. It just, you know, it shoots film. It's not a DSLR. And I think that is a massive advantage, not a disadvantage, personally speaking. Anyway, let's just finish off here. What's going on for the rest of this? You've obviously got your shutter speed, which shoots anything from 2,000th of a second, which is pretty great, to 8 seconds. You have aperture priority, which is sometimes called auto. It's aperture priority. You have an X for external flash. I think, yeah. And then you have a B bulb, which is normal, put it on tripod, B bulb, bump, timed exposure basically. But Nikon on this model put on a T setting, which basically does exactly the same thing as the bulb setting, but it doesn't use battery. It's a mechanical override so that you don't drain your battery, which is, you know, pretty amazing. Really good. With your selfies, you know, your selfie mode thing that I was talking about, you move it over, wind on, and then again at the front, just hit your button, and there you go. I think it's 10 seconds, and it blinks a bit faster towards the end, so you know when you run in front when it's about to go. There you go. Yeah, even that still works. You know, even the sort of faster blinking still works. The bulb hasn't died. I mean, how do they do that? It's anyway. Again, never use it, but it's there. Some people will, some people won't. You have your depth of field button, the silver button here. This thing that my finger's on, which again is nice and stiff, just like it should be, just like it always has been. Which just gives you, you know, what are we on? F22, push that down, it goes dark. You can see how much is going to be in focus, in essence, or, you know, how you've got a very good high depth of field. If you open it up, so the aperture's wide open, you press that and nothing happens because it's a very shallow depth of field. Just gives you an indicator. Again, never use it, doesn't get in the way, no big deal. This also has incorporated into it, you push that down and move this button across, and that is your mirror lockup. So again, if you're on a tripod and you're on a slow shutter speed, maybe a second or something like that, as opposed to 2/50th of a second, you're not going to get vibration that's going to maybe knock the film a little bit, and you're going to lose a little. You're going to have an image that looks as though it's lost a bit of focus. Just to, it blacks out. You can't see anything through it, but you compose your shot first, as I say, on a tripod, and then just literally take the shot. Oh, I'm still on. So that's a really nice feature. I've just cancelled that, and it basically does that, and then move it across and your mirror opens back up again. Again, I never use that. I'm just street photography, pure and simple. Oh, and down below here, you have a, what do you call it? Like you fix your exposure, and then you decide you want to move and keep that same exposure, boom, you just press that button. You see? It's just kind of where your finger would be anyway. What's it called? Exposure lock, I suppose. Which is I do use, which is very useful sometimes. And then down here, and this is the one I was telling you about earlier, down here is, I'm doing a very good job here, but you just move that across like so, and this is what appeased all the professional photographers of the day when they were worried about batteries going. This had a double function really. It basically said to all those nervous professional photographers, don't worry, if your batteries go, you can actually even turn your camera off. The battery's dead, the camera's dead, but guess what? You've got a manual shutter release there that when you wind on, you just, in any position, you just pull that lever down. You see my finger just moving there. Just move that down, and you have a manual shutter release, which is brilliant. And they all breathed a sigh of relief and bought these by the lorry load. You can also, it's a very useful little, if you're in vertical portrait mode, like so, yeah, you can use that, the shutter, but you can also use it here really nicely, just as another shutter. But it would only, I think it only fires an 80th of a second. So you'd have to obviously put your aperture, your corresponding aperture to an 80th of a second. But that's cool, that's great. The grip, obviously, just a nice, lovely, perfect grip in my hands anyway. You can see how compact this is, just how simple. You can use this for street photography, you can use it for whatever you want. The pancake lens, as I say, beautiful. Best, not the fastest Nikon lens, but the best, I believe, the best 50mm lens, sharpest Nikon lens, Nikon 50mm lens they've ever made. Gorgeous glass, gorgeous build quality. But as I say, I'm talking about accessories. I've not even talked about the lenses that are available. F-mount lenses for this camera. If it's got an aperture, I believe you can use it on this camera. You've got a ton of lenses to choose from. I've only ever had that lens on it, so I'm a one lens man. But if you want, you've got an array of lenses there. And I think that's kind of it. You've got, on the bottom plate, you can, battery compartment, LR44, 2 little disc batteries. As I say, they last forever. Not literally. And then you can bolt your MD4, I think it is, the motor drive MD here. MD4, I think it is, on the bottom here. It's quite a big thing, but Makes a very sexy sound. But again, never use one, never want to. And you've got a little button here that's integral to the base plate, to the bottom, doesn't stick up or anything. Just for when you're ready to rewind your film, you just shove that up. You don't have to keep your finger on it, you just press it up once and then lift up your rewind crank, and then you're good to start rewinding back. Every camera has one of these on somewhere. So, just a phenomenal camera. And I'm not trying to sell you a camera. Far from it, you know, at all. I'm just trying to extol the virtues of this camera, the extraordinary virtues of this camera, so that if you are thinking of buying one at some point, if you've never used film, what a fantastic entry level camera. It is not entry level in terms of what it does, it is a professional camera, but it is a fantastic camera to learn on, I believe. You can use it as simply as you want, and then you've got all the scope to kind of do other stuff. As I used to do back in the day, I don't now, I just shoot straight. To learn on. Absolutely phenomenal. And I wouldn't ever normally say, you know, buy a professional camera if you're learning. But this is so simple. This is so simple and easy to use that I am going to say it. And I think the overriding key thing is here. Number one, if you're buying an SLR camera today, you cannot buy a new one. You have to buy secondhand. There's no company making SLR film cameras today, 35mm. You have to buy secondhand. And with secondhand comes a risk. Not with these things. They are, and that's kind of what I'm trying to get at. They are so reliable. Ultra bulletproof reliable. Now, obviously you have to do your due diligence and checks and what have you. But, you know, I've seen these things beaten up, dented, scratched, and they still work perfectly. You know, this one's in really, you know, I don't know what eBay's terminology would be, but it would probably be near mint or something like that. But I look after my cameras. You know, I've paid for it. I'm looking after it. Simple as that. And I don't, you know, it hasn't been to a war zone, but, you know, they did. You would often, these cameras would be seen in war zones constantly. I said I'd talk about some negatives, and I believe that's, you know, that's only right and fair. They're not negatives for me, I should say, straight off. If you are a flash user, a big, you know, flash person, then maybe this isn't, well, I wouldn't say maybe it's not for you, but, you know, this thing is a little bit unusual. I love it because I don't use it and it's out of the way, and I just think it's a beautiful, different kind of design. So it's kind of something that I'm not going to use that's sort of out of the way. But if you do, so Nikon used, I believe it's a titanium shutter. It's an electronic shutter, but it's made of titanium, and it had the horizontal, I think it was a horizontal movement. Don't quote me on that, but I think it was. And as I say, I'm not a flash person, so I'm not, you know, I think that limited the shutter speed that you could use your flash with. So on this dial, it's a 60th of a second. Now, as I said, I don't use flash, but back in the day when I was trying it out and, you know, seeing if I liked it or not, I did use it, and it was, I would shoot on a 60th or slower, because I always, don't know what this is about, but I always loved freezing the action and then maybe seeing a bike or a car or some people walking behind that was blurred. I love that sort of frozen set against movement in the background, and a 60th or lower gave you that to a greater or lesser extent. If you're, you know, 2/5 of a second, everything's frozen, boom, end of kind of thing. But I do believe that a lot of flash photographers like the versatility of, you know, 125 or 2/50 of a second, or, you know, or even even faster on leaf shutter. Anyway, but so that's something to consider. Whether it's a deal breaker for you, only you can decide. But I just thought, yeah, it's so on the FE, the Nikon FE, which is like an F3, but it's just pared down a little bit. It's a semi-professional camera rather than a full professional camera. Beautiful, beautiful camera. A little bit, tiny bit smaller, a little bit lighter. Not much. We're only talking a few grams. I believe the shutter on that is 125 of a second, and on the I'm useless with names. On the I think it's the FM3. It was one of Nikon's last SLR cameras, if not the last SLR camera they built. I think it was 2/50 of a second. I think it was the FM3. As I say, I'm not a flash person, but so you know, those would be considerations. And not the FM3, but the FE is probably 100 quid cheaper than that. And that again, I'm going to say here today, September 2021, these retail on eBay anyway for around about £300, £250, £300, which is an awful lot of a camera. You know, you probably won't use most things. You know, people tend to shoot what they shoot, don't they? But you've got the versatility there. But more importantly, you have got that reliability factor when you're buying secondhand. Utterly astonishing reliability. Unbelievable. This thing feels as though, you know, touch wood, I'm not trying to tempt fate here, but this thing honestly feels as though it's going to go on for another 100 years and not even blink. I don't know. Check the seals. But again, you know, I hear that this has got the most dampened mirror bumper, which again is a fantastic thing because it reduces any vibration. You know, you can't feel vibration. You can hear the shutter go, the mirror go, but you can't feel it. Whereas in a lot of cameras you can. This is very dampened. So I don't know whether they've, you know, any 30-year-old camera, I would say, needs new seals. They'll deteriorate, but they haven't on this. So I don't know whether, you know, that extra dampening thing is they're using different materials. I honestly don't know. But just on the F3, I'm just going to give you a little bit of a pointer here, just briefly. But, you know, you can, if you're very careful, do this yourself. And you have top rail, bottom rail, and it just goes in there. I believe people are actually using gauge 3 cotton instead of the sort of spongy stuff with the glue that kind of disintegrates after time and it just becomes like black oily muck. But these are the two channels to think about. And see, I mean, and there on the back of the door to again prevent light coming through, you have, it looks to me like felt. You know, I can see it and feel it. Don't know if the light's going to pick that up. Just alongside, just here. Is that felt? I don't know. As opposed to that spongy stuff. And can't actually see anything there, so I'm assuming it doesn't need it. But there, and also you take the lens off, you have a bumper for the mirror. When it flaps up, it just stops it smashing, basically. I presume, you know, or cracking, or again, just along the top ridge there inside. If you can see that, like I don't know what it's made of, but it doesn't look worn and it doesn't look like it's threadbare or about to go, or as though it's become that horrible black treacle that a lot of seals and a lot of other cameras turn to. There's also one at the back there, right at the back, but you're probably not going to be able to see that. But anyway, that's just something to think about. You know, when if you're buying, if you're in the market, maybe check other seals. You know, I can't say that they'll be fine because, you know, I can tell you mine are fine after 30 years, but that's just my camera. I can't vouch for other F3s. But yeah, just an incredible, incredible camera. Can be used very, very easily, very simple to use, very beautiful to use. And yes, it is slightly overkill in terms of it's a professional camera, but it's still wonderful to learn on. It's still got the, you know, you put a prime lens on it, teaches you everything you need to learn about apertures and shutter speeds. And, you know, £300 for an absolutely stonking camera, you know, as I say, would be probably be about 3,500 if they were being sold new today. So I think that's an absolute steal. FE's probably around about the 150 mark. You know, all these things, don't write in saying, you know, because it depends on condition, it depends on age, it depends on whether it comes with a box and all that kind of stuff. I've seen these as low as £100. I dare say you could get one in a car boot sale for less than that. And it could be a really, really good one, you know, to some person that doesn't, you know, just wants a few quid for it. But I've also seen them as much as £600, you know, and there are different versions of these. There's the F3T and the F3P, which just have different things. It's the same basic camera, but the T is titanium, a titanium body, and the P was for press photographers that didn't want a lock on the, you know, just various little things that are different. You know, you can Google that and find out that yourself. I can't talk about those. I'll be here forever. But just an astonishing camera to do, you know, personal work with, professional work with, whatever you want. But if you want to get into film, it's, you know, I would honestly say, well, no, the best SLR camera ever made, without any shadow of a doubt, was the Nikon F6. I believe, you know, head and shoulders above anything else. Astonishing camera. Will I ever use one? Never. In a million years. It's too big. For me, it's too big. This is about, I think, 760 grams. The F6 is round about a kilo. The F5 is double the size, double the weight, everything of this. It's, you know, it's 1.5 kilos. I can't remember what the F4 is, but it's definitely heavier than that and bigger. They're like DSLR cameras. So they might be brilliant cameras, but for shooting film, I'm sorry, you know, I'm having that every single time. I don't want autofocus. I don't want 10 frames a second. Sorry. You know, that's what bulks it out and makes it hideous. And you know, I don't want to be walking out with a camera thinking I've got to lug this thing around with me all day. Whereas this thing just, you know, horizontal when I'm not using it, bring it up at any given second, and I don't even notice it. It's just there, but it's not dislocating my shoulder and being an absolute, you know, dead weight pain. I walk around quite happily all day with that. And that's, you know, I'm not a big lens man either. I could even maybe put that in a large pocket, coat pocket, quite easily. I like having something that feels compact in the hands. I can just lift up and use very, very quickly, very, very simply. End of story. Big is a sort of, for me, big lenses, big cameras, not interested. I actually bought this out. This is my go-to camera, if you like. Just so you can get an idea of, size. So that way, this is a Leica MP. That way, it's a little bit longer. I don't know if you're seeing that properly. It's a little bit longer, and This is a 50mm Sumarit lens, which is tiny, but you know, this is obviously much the diameter is much less on this, much smaller on this than this, but I would say that's longer than this. Not by much, but it is shorter. And width-wise, this is narrower. Actually, no, it's not. I thought it was. It's about the same thickness that way. It's obviously a bit bigger because of this, or a bit taller, but that's quite interesting, isn't it? This is lower, apart from the viewfinder here, apart from the prism sitting on the top. That's taller. The MP is taller. So it's kind of, you know, kind of much of a muchness. Considered a slightly larger SLR compared to, I don't know, a Pentax K1000 or an Olympus OM1 or something like that. Those are kind of really tiny SLRs, very, very small, too small for my hands, in fact. I held one the other day and it was kind of, yeah, button just, yeah, anyway. But yeah, so slightly larger, but nowhere near DSLR size. So for me, it's just nice and compact, fits in my hands perfectly. I've not got huge hands or anything, but yeah, just, you can focus 0.45 with that lens, very, very close, very versatile, incredibly versatile camera. Probably, you know, the most versatile modular platform of any SLR. I can't think of another one. Maybe there is, but there aren't many that are more versatile than that, with tons of accessories, tons of lenses, still today. So you could easily kind of go, oh, it's a 30-year-old camera, 40-year-old, you know, some are as old as 40 years old, 41 years old. Is it relevant? Does it have a relevance today? I think so. I think it's just a phenomenal camera. I don't even think of it as an analog camera or a DSLR. It's just a wonderful, wonderful instrument to take pictures with, you know. And it's film, so you have the benefit of both. When you scan a negative, when you scan a piece of film, you have the piece of film and your digital image. That's the best of both worlds. Digital cameras, you just have noughts and ones. Anyway, I'm not going to get into that. That's for another time, maybe. But yeah, I just thought, you know, for anybody looking to get into it, like a millennial or anybody my age even that's just never tried film photography, I just think the F3 is a wonderful, wonderful camera. And you know what? If you decide you don't, what have you lost? You can sell that probably. Yeah, I think these are going to go up in price. You could possibly even sell it for more than you bought it for if you box clever, if you know how to do eBay, which I don't. But yeah, it's worth a vlog, this camera, and that's why I've done it every day. So I'm going to stop there. Thank you so much for stopping by, and see you for the next one. Cheers for now.